Washington Journal continues.
We want to welcome back to our table Senator Ron Johnson, Republican of Wisconsin, sits on the Foreign Relations Committee as well as Homeland Security and Government Affairs. Let me begin with yesterday's vote on Keystone XL. You, along with your other Republican colleagues, all voted yes to build this pipeline. It failed by one vote. In the 114th Congress, how many votes does it get?
It's hard to say, but we'll obviously have hopefully 54 votes, and then we'll just need another 6 or 7. Yesterday we had, I think, 14 votes
from Democrats
that joined. Some of those individuals will no longer be in the Senate, but we'll probably still have pretty strong bipartisan support for permitting the Keystone XL pipeline.
And what do you think then? Do you have enough votes to override a presidential veto?
It doesn't look like we'll have enough to override, but hopefully President Obama will listen to the wishes of the American public. I think this is really an issue that the American people support because Americans want their energy prices lower. And that's just good for economic growth. I mean, that's, in the end, the goal here is let's keep American energy prices low. It's a huge economic advantage we have in the global economy. We're the world's largest market. We have relatively cheap power. What makes us economically uncompetitive is a uncompetitive tax system and regulatory burden. So let's not artificially drive up the cost of power by denying ourselves access to these resources.
What evidence do you have that this will have an impact on on Americans' energy costs?
When you increase the supply of any product, that's going to continue to put downward pressure on prices. It just makes sense. It's just law of supply and demand. So it's hard to say exactly what effect it'll have. You just know it's going to be a beneficial effect from a standpoint of keeping energy prices reasonably priced and competitive advantage for America.
How much, though, does it add to the supply when there is already this tar sand oil coming into the country? It has been for decades, and there's already 150,000 miles of pipeline that exists. So really, how much is this adding to the supply?
We can play the numbers game. The bottom line here is that regardless of whether we build a pipeline or somebody else builds a pipeline, this oil is going to be used. The fossil fuels will continue to be used. I would much rather, if you're concerned about the environment, we've already talked about the State Department study. This is the least environmentally impactful way of transporting this oil. In other words, the most environmentally friendly way to transport the oil. I think that's a good thing, but we're going to also burn and utilize the oil in a more environmentally friendly way here in America than if it gets shipped over to China. So if you're concerned about the environment, the Keystone XL pipeline is a good deal for the environment.
As you noted, Americans do overwhelmingly want the Keystone XL pipeline. According to USA Today yesterday, by 60 to 25%, they say Congress and the President should approve the Keystone XL pipeline. They also, though, overwhelmingly approve of the President's deal with China on climate change. So should Republicans work with the President on that?
Well, the deal with China, I don't think people really understand how China does nothing. They make a commitment, 20-some years in the future to do something, and at the same time, what President Obama has committed America to is really incur some pretty significant costs on the American economy. Candidate Obama said because of his cap and trade proposals, which now he couldn't pass in Congress, but he's going to push it through his regulation. Candidate Obama said electricity rates would necessarily skyrocket. So, if you fearmonger about climate change, and I don't deny that we have change in climate, it's just like what can we actually do about it and how much do we want to spend, how much harm do we want to cause to not only our economy, but to Americans' pocketbooks. How much do we really want electricity rates to necessarily skyrocket because of these policies? I think if Americans really fully take a look at exactly what President Obama, what his policies will do, I don't think very many Americans would support their electricity rates skyrocketing.
Let's talk about NSA reforms. According to a Gallup poll that was done in June of 2013 after the Edward Snowden leaks were made, Americans disapprove of the government's surveillance program and they want it reined in. How did you vote yesterday on doing that?
Well, I voted against proceeding to this bill because this bill didn't even go through committee, didn't go through the proper debate in committee. This is the lame duck session. These are some pretty serious issues. Listen, I'm a strong civil libertarian. I want to make sure that Americans' privacy are protected and that we don't have a federal government that is abusive in its power. But we also face some pretty significant threats in this nation around the world. ISIS is a threat to America. That threat, if anything, is growing. And so our best line of defense against that growing threat of Islamic terror is a robust intelligence gathering capability. So we need to debate these issues in a very robust fashion. We need to have all the facts. We need to make sure we understand all the threats. We need to know exactly how these types of measures would hamstring our national security efforts to keep America safe. And just rushing this bill through a lame duck session is not the way to go on this. So I think it never should have been rushed to the floor of the Senate. We have plenty of time till June of next year to fully debate this, to make sure we strike that very delicate balance between security and civil liberties. And that's not an easy balance point to strike.
So on the policy, though, who do you agree with? Senator Mitch McConnell, your leader, said yesterday this ties the hands of our intelligence at a time when we shouldn't be doing that. And then you've got your colleague, Senator Rand Paul, on the other side saying this bill did not go far enough to protect Americans' civil liberties. At
this point in time in our history, and that balancing point always shifts, I guess I'm more looking at the balancing point trying to keep America safe. And having to impose as many or give the intelligence community as many tools as they need to keep America safe. Now, again, this is very, very difficult issues. It needs far more thoughtful debate than what we would have given it in the lame duck.
And does that come from your positions on foreign relations and homeland security, that you have that thought process, that you lean more towards don't tie the intelligence agencies' hands right now?
We need to control them appropriately. But let's face it, these programs have robust and continuous oversight. They really do. And this is one thing in particular, if you take a look at the far right and the far left, they're both concerned with civil liberties. So they're, from both sides of the political spectrum, they're going to be watching to make sure that there's no abuse. And that'd be the first thing I'd point out is, where have we seen any Americans' rights abused because of this pretty narrow targeted program by the NSA? If we saw even one case of abuse or widespread abuse, I'd be far more concerned, and I'd probably be more on the civil liberties side on this point. But right now, I don't think that's the case. I think these FISA judges are patriots. I think the people in the NSA are trying to keep America safe, and they've got an enormously difficult job, and I want to support their efforts.
This is a little bit of a lightning round,
Sure.
But let me put another issue on the table for our viewers, and that's immigration reform. Here's a headline in the New York Times this morning. In immigration fight, Republicans explore alternatives to a shutdown. One option floated in the House by Appropriations Chairman Hal Rogers calls for passing his committee's broad spending bill by a December 11th deadline and then rescinding funds for Mr. Obama's executive action. Another option proposed by Representative Tom Price, Republican of Georgia, calls for passing most of the broad spending bills, but taking out money for programs specifically related to Obama's planned immigration action and fighting the president with a short-term standalone measure for those particular funds. Do either one of those sound appealing to you?
Well, this is where I think we really can effectively utilize our power of the purse to, again, do what I think the American people support. I don't think the American people support President Obama's unilateral executive amnesty action here. So we don't have to, there's nobody threatening any kind of government shutdown. I think what we should do is through a thoughtful process, hopefully through the appropriation process, where we start prioritizing spending, fund the vast majority of the government, but we can very narrowly focus a defund effort on just those specific actions. We may be talking about a couple $1 million of funding that we just simply won't grant the administration or prevent him from spending money, any funds, to do what he may be contemplating doing, which, maybe he's issuing some sort of legitimizing documents, green cards or whatever. We could prevent him from taking those types of actions, still keep the vast majority of the federal government open.
And do you do that by December, or do you do that in the next Congress?
Well, we'll see whether or not the Senate Democrats would go along with that type of thing. They may block that. They may try and threaten to shut the government down. In which case, maybe we can pass a short-term CR, totally clean, get us into the new Congress where we have control over the process in the Senate, and then we can again focus on that. So, in any event, this is not going to be an overreaction. I think it'll be an appropriate reaction. And from my standpoint, as the incoming chairman of the Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs, regardless of what President Obama does, my primary focus on the Homeland Security portion of that committee is to finally pass a border security and enforcement bill, something that finally secures the border, which, I think most Americans believe is the first step in a full immigration reform process. Because when you do comprehensive, the American people just simply don't believe, and they have no reason to believe, that we will ever secure the border. So we have to do that first. then we'll have the public support to take further measures in terms of finally solving this immigration issue.
So this border security legislation's got to go through your committee as well as judiciary, I assume?
Well, there's a number of committees of
Right.
potential jurisdiction. I'm already sitting down with Chairman McCall in the House, so I want to coordinate the actions with the relevant House committees, the relevant Senate committees, get the chairman of those committees working together, and if we can kind of develop one unified bill, it's going to really cut down, both of those bills would then, out of committee, would go to the floor of the Senate and the floor of the House, and it could be amended, and they still have to conference. But if we can come up with a pretty unified border security and enforcement bill out of those committees, it's going to streamline that process. So, I'm a business guy. I try and do things efficiently as possible.
All right. Well, Senator Ron Johnson, our guest here, Republican of Wisconsin, and as he told you, the incoming chairman for the 114th Congress of the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs panel. Let's go to Phyllis first in Ridgecrest, California, an independent. Hi, Phyllis.
Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to comment. I've been listening for several weeks now on this Keystone Pipeline, and Senator Ron says that the American people are for it. However, listening to the people calling in, they don't seem to be for it. So I'd like to understand why he believes that the American people are for it. I am a registered voter myself, and I'm totally against it. Also, number two, as far as this immigration that's going on, I understand that maybe we should just take all the undocumented persons that are here and just take them back since they're illegal here, regardless of who they may be, and just not depose them, but deport them back to their country. If they want to come back, then they should come back through means that are legal. As far as ISIS is concerned, in the beheadings that have been going on, we have to understand as well that the culture, which I heard yesterday, this evil culture that the gentleman was talking about yesterday, that these people, that part of the world has been in effect for millennium. They have been chopping heads off as David and Goliath.
So, Phyllis, then do you disagree with this strategy to try to destroy and degrade them?
Well, no. We can't destroy and degrade them because they've been here a long time. Their culture has been here for as longer than American culture, and we ourselves have a lot of evil in our own system and society, even present day. As we're looking to trying to support other people, we have to make sure that our own children can walk and live in this country.
Okay, Phyllis, I got to leave it there so I can get in some more voices.
Phyllis, you've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
In terms of Keystone XL pipeline, I think the latest poll was 60% supported it, 25% were opposed, so that's why I say the American people support that. In terms of immigration, one of the components I'd like to add to a border security bill would be a strong and functioning guest worker program. I'm a manufacturer, so I was trying to go to root cause analysis. You take a look at, why is it difficult to secure a border? Because we have a lot of people coming in here illegally. If we could eliminate or reduce the incentives for illegal immigration, you really make the problem or the challenge of securing our border a whole lot easier. What's the number one reason people come here illegally? They're coming here to find work. And so if we have a functioning guest worker program, and by the way, I'd love to have the states really involved. They can set the quotas, they can set the prevailing wages. Don't want to incentivize employers to bring in low-cost labor. Get the states involved in this process. If we could have a functioning guest worker program, you dramatically reduce the number of people coming in here illegally, be a whole lot easier securing the border.
What about making companies do the whole background check and clearance?
Yeah, those are the components. You need an e-verify system so that if they do their due diligence, it's easy to do the due diligence, make sure that people are qualified to work, then they're held harmless. We need interior enforcement. 40% of illegal immigrants right now are here because of visa overstays. We can track a package of UPS on a corner. We should be able to, make sure we monitor people that come here on visas and make sure they're not overstaying those visas.
All right, let's go to Clint next in Texas, Republican. Hi, Clint.
Hi, how are you today?
Morning.
Hello, Clint.
Pleasure to be on the show. My comments on a couple of things is, one, I voted Republican with the promise that you guys would go in and start doing the thing. But what do? the first thing you do is go in and try to pass the Keystone Pipeline, which benefits the rich oil companies, which I assume are probably a lot of your backers. When you have bill on the immigration bill, you have it on the floor. There's one on the floor running around somewhere nobody wants to vote on. Also, there's a bill for infrastructure that would put millions, possibly hundreds of thousands of people to work working on our highways and improving our infrastructure as it is. You know, it's mind-boggling that the first thing you do is go for the throat, go in and try to help the oil companies.
Okay, Clint, got your point. So
Clinton, in terms of the United States Senate, the Democrats control the floor, and that was something Mary Landry wanted to bring up, but the House passed it as well. And the point I want to make is, you know, on a marginal basis, having that supply of oil keeps energy prices low, and that benefits everybody. If you do a SWOT analysis, that's in business, you do that strategic planning, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. The strengths of the American economy is we're the biggest customer. Manufacturers want to manufacture close to their customer. Plus, we have relatively cheap power. If you're going to manufacture things, you know, you need power. Cheap power is better than expensive power. So what you don't want to do is artificially drive up that cost of power. So that benefits every American because it keeps America a more competitive economy in relationship to the rest of the world. So it doesn't just benefit oil companies, it benefits every American.
Daryl, Bloomfield, Indiana, Democratic caller.
Hello.
Hi, Daryl. You're on the air with Senator Ron Johnson.
Okay, I have 3 questions for Senator Johnson. One, does he think that it's okay for a foreign company to take Americans' land away from them under eminent domain? Number 2, does he think that clean water is more valuable than oil, or oil's more valuable than clean water? And number 3, does he think it's okay to break our treaties with the Indian tribes in that area? And I'll take his answer on the air.
Okay, Daryl.
Okay. Where do I start? I can't read my writing now.
Foreign companies taking American land.
I've got a real concern, especially at the Kelo decision, about the expansion of eminent domain. That's a real problem. I actually encourage foreign investment in America. That's what we want. We want to make America an attractive place for investment, for job expansion. Second one was...
the second one was clean water versus oil.
It's not an either-or choice. I'm for clean water, and I'm also for using our God-given natural energy resources. That's how you have a growing economy. And the third, listen, we have a real obligation to American Native Americans and abide by those treaties. And we've got a lot of tribes in Wisconsin, and I'm trying to do everything we can to have good relationships with American Native Americans.
New London, Wisconsin, Jean, independent caller. Hi there, Jean.
Yes, hi.
Go ahead.
I would like to know who would be responsible for the cleanup if the pipe should leak. Would it be the taxpayer or would it be the oil company? And please be
specific.
Don't talk around the subject, in other words.
Well,
okay.
Jean, by the way, that's my wife was born in New London, Wisconsin, so you might know her, Jane Curler. But anyway, no, listen, in the past, certainly the companies have been held fully responsible. Maybe some initial government activity to rush resources to it, whether it's FEMA or different state and local officials. But in the end, it is the companies that pay dearly. BP paid, $20 billion for what happened in the Gulf and in other pipeline spills. Those companies end up paying the full price and then some because they get sued. So no, the companies have every incentive to maintain as safe of pipelines as possible so they prevent those spills, because in the end they're going to end up paying for it.
Okay, Corey, you're next. Lexington, Kentucky, Republican.
Yes, sir. I have 3 quick questions for you. The first being, how could you possibly lead the board for the NSA, who is completely overstepping their power and getting rid of pretty much the Fourth Amendment by illegally searching and seizing people's information, one. The one thing that I could see there being a loophole for that is that we actually make people sign privacy agreements before they could use just about anything in this country, which kind of loopholes a lot of our policies that we had originally settled in our country. One, I need you to answer that. Two, why are we spending so much money on oil in other countries when I have friends who are actually engineers in this state and in this country that work in oil mines, and we have plenty of our own? And three, if we are going to continue with this pipeline idea and something does happen, are we going to continue to use the same exact chemical that we used for the 1989 Exxon spill that we also used in the BP spill, the chemical Corexit, which was disapproved by the FDA, but yet still continue to be used, even though we know that it doesn't dissolve the oil. It sinks the heavier matters of the oil to the bottom of the flow, kind of like slowing down the Atlantic current, and it still left the film on top of the water, leaving the workers who touched it sick.
Okay, Corey, got to run.
I'm no engineer expert in terms of the spills, so I'll have to leave that question. In terms of the NSA, local prosecutors have far greater subpoena power toward these type of records than what the NSA has. So this is not illegal. It's been ruled constitutional by courts. And so I think this is really being blown out of proportion in terms of what the NSA is actually doing. It's very limited. You have a great deal of monitoring, oversight, and again, you've got people on both the right and the far left monitoring and making sure that we're not abusing American civil liberties. And so, again, we face some very significant threats in this nation. We need intelligence gathering capabilities. Let's not hamstring the people that are trying to keep us safe. I don't really have any answers for the other.
We'll move on to Bronx, New York. Joe, Democratic caller. Hi, Joe.
Good morning, Greta.
Morning.
How are you doing today? This is Joe, the counselor from the Bronx, New York. Good morning, Senator Johnson.
Hello, Joe. How are you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. How about just one question? It's hard to keep three of them.
Okay. Well, I'm going to, yes. Well, let's talk about the immigration. All right. Number one, immigration, when I hear especially the Republicans talking about the border, and most of the time you heard people say the border have been secured. So that's not the problem. But what I'm saying to you today, I'm asking this question. Why you think the Republicans don't want to see the immigrations? And sometimes you hear on this station where we're talking now, some Republicans who are honest will tell you, because if the immigration pass, the Democrats will have what you call, all these people will vote Democrats, and Democrats will be in power.
Okay, Joe, we'll take your point.
Yeah.
Senator?
Well, first of all, I don't think I know it's a big controversial issue, but if you really delve down into it, I don't think there's that great a difference in positions. I think we're talking about a timing issue. I think Republicans believe you really have to secure the border first before we can really address the remaining issue. We naturalize about 1 million people per year in this country. We're a nation of immigrants. I value that point. You know, we've got a lot of immigrants in Wisconsin working dairy. They are incredibly hardworking people. They are valuable members of our community. And you know, we will be welcoming those people, but we have to do it in a legal way. And you have to secure the border first, not just to solve the illegal immigration problem, but as an imperative for public health and safety. I mean, we've got drug-resistant strains of tuberculosis. Now we have Ebola. From a national security standpoint. So to me, it's the timing that is the big problem. It's really Democrats that are holding our border security hostage for a guarantee of citizenship. I've yet to have an immigrant in Wisconsin ask me for citizenship. What they're asking is, you know, young little kids, you know, tears streaming down their eyes, you know, don't deport my mom and dad. We're not going to do that unless they're criminals, if they're not working. Or don't deport my young husband or wife that got brought in as a young person. We're not going to be doing that, but we have to secure the border first.
Isn't that what the president is proposing to do, though, those people?
But the problem is, by not securing the border and doing it by executive fiat, what he's actually doing, let's take deferred action on childhood admissions. I mean, that's what he was doing, but the problem with that is he created an incentive for illegal immigration. So we had young people streaming to the border, creating a real humanitarian crisis. So again, I'm doing a root cause analysis. Let's eliminate or reduce the incentives for illegal immigration. So when you talk about citizenship, before you secure the border, if you have a functioning legal immigration system, you're increasing the incentive for illegal immigration and you get more. So let's reduce the incentive for illegal immigration. Let's have a functioning guest worker system. Let's secure the border first. And then I think we'll actually pretty easily be able to come together in terms of what we need to do with people that remain here.
I want to show our viewers and you the Fiscal Times. They had this headline recently about you. Why Senator Ron Johnson is federal workers' new worst nightmare. As the incoming chairman of Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs, they write in this piece, they point to things that you've said, that federal employees are overpaid, even after a three-year freeze on their basic pay rates. They also say that you've said that federal workers' health care and retirement benefits should be open to review and modification. Are you going to go after federal workers?
Well, first of all, I want to have all the federal workers kind of calm, let's set their mind at ease.
Okay.
What I've seen here in 4 years is I've just got a lot of respect. I've seen really high quality level in our federal workforce. All I'm talking about is, I come from a business background. In business, you always have to benchmark your competitive attributes against your competitors. And that's all I'm talking about here. I don't think anybody wants to underpay public sector or federal workers, but we also can't afford to overpay them. So, there have been a number of studies on both sides of the issue. The way I'd use my chairmanship is let's hold the hearings and let's get the truth. Let's get the facts and the figures. But, federal workers should not be immune to modification of their pay packages. In the private sector, running my company, because of runaway health care costs, we were modifying our health care plan every year. Public sector workers can't expect to be immune from the same process of private sector workers. So no, I don't think federal workers have anything to fear from me at all. We've got priorities we have to address: securing our border, try and reduce the regulatory burden. I would be happy if we can get through some of those top priorities. But again, we'll continue to take a look at this, but it would primarily be fact-finding, information gathering, so we really understand what the truth of the matter is, and get the political demagoguery out of the way, and we'll address it in a very forthright manner.
What agencies are your top priority as chairman?
Well, again, if you look at this committee, it's Homeland Security and it's Governmental Affairs.
Right.
So on the Homeland Security standpoint, it's really border security, it's cyber security. I would like to look at an authorization for Homeland Security. It's an agency that really needs an authorization to streamline its reporting requirements to Congress. I want to see Secretary Johnson succeed, because if he succeeds, America stays safe. So I'd like to do everything we can. What do we need to do to protect our grid? So I mean, that's a big focus of mine. But then on the governmental affairs standpoint, one of the big competitive disadvantages we have is a regulatory burden in this country that's onerous. About $1.8 trillion per year to comply with federal regulations. Only 10 economies in the world are bigger than that. So we really do need to reach out to the other side, and that's the way I'm going to approach this. Let's find the areas of agreement. I'm not going to ask Democrat senators to violate the principles, but there have to be regulations in their states that are causing some real harm to businesses, certainly preventing businesses from being able to create jobs and expand their businesses. So let's work together. Let's try and reduce that regulatory burden.
Also, what about Secret Service agency? That falls under, that's within Homeland Security, and with the breaches at the White House, et cetera. What do you want to do on that?
Well, we've got to get a strong director. My preference would be to bring somebody from outside the agency. I've been pretty well at the heart of the Inspector General. When we started looking at these reports after Cartagena, we found out the current Inspector General was not, did not have integrity. Let's put it that way. The reports were not accurate. And so he's moved on. We've got a good Inspector General. I've got a great deal of faith in Secretary Jay Johnson. And so hopefully he'll appoint a director that comes from outside the agency, because I think we have a cultural problem there. That's my standpoint. So this is where a new perspective, a fresh set of eyes, I think would be very helpful. We've got to restore the credibility of the Secret Service. We've got to make sure there are procedures in place so they can keep the President of the United States safe, other governmental officials, they can perform their duties. And this is the time to go outside the agency and bring in a fresh new perspective. Okay,
so after the resignation of Julia Pearson, the House Judiciary Committee today is going to hear from the acting director, Joseph Clancy, and we are going to have coverage of that. He's expected to tell the committee, that's at 10 a.m. Eastern Time on C-SPAN 3, he's expected to tell the House Judiciary Committee that the Secret Service has fallen short of its high standards.
It has. I mean, it's just obvious. And so, again, we really need to bring in a very strong director, somebody from the outside, and really take a look at the cultural problems that are plaguing the agency.
We'll go to Diane, Toledo, Ohio, Independent. Diane, you're on the air with Senator Ron Johnson. Go ahead.
Good morning, Senator.
Morning.
Hey, one of the most things that offends me about the government is when they exempt themselves from their own laws. So if I'm not mistaken, you were the senator that filed a suit against Obamacare or in relation to Obamacare that even though it was written into law that Congress and the administration would have to participate in Obamacare, somehow magically they were exempted from the mandate. Is that correct that was you?
Right.
And
right.
If so, how is that lawsuit going?
Well, unfortunately, the district judge, and what you're talking about is the Office of Personnel Management, under pressure from the White House and members of Congress, literally changed the law in their ruling. And so what I did is I filed suit to uphold the law. Now, unfortunately, the district judge did not grant me standing, so dismissed the case on the basis of that legal technicality. We never heard the merits of my case, but we have appealed at the Second Circuit. I think we've got a pretty good shot to have the Seventh Circuit overturn that dismissal. It'd be remanded back to the district court so we could actually try the case in court. And by the way, even the district court, when he ruled on that, basically quoted James Madison, said how important my case really was, because if we vest all power, legislative, judicial, executive, in the hands of a few, that really is the very definition of tyranny. So even though he dismissed my case, a good conservative judge, we think we got it wrong from that standpoint. I think if we hear the case on the merits, I think we'll prevail.
Okay. Hudson, Florida. Steve, we're a Democratic caller.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning, Steve.
Yes, been listening to the other callers, and you had a Republican that was definitely recommending to invest in the American infrastructure. The Keystone Pipeline, that company does not pay the 8 cents per barrel of emergency money in case there's a spill. Yes, you correctly identified that the federal resources would respond to it, but that's federally supported by the taxpayers of this country. Absolutely, they would be involved. But in court, when you try to recover the money spent by the federal tax supported companies, there has to be that 8 cents per barrel emergency money available. Otherwise, the company could claim bankruptcy. It could just shut down. There's nothing to go after. Or you just tie it up in court forever and ever and ever and ever, hoping it goes away. I agree that by the procedures going as it is, it's a mechanism for the Republicans to prevent Democrat votes. But unless this country, unless the Congress gets absolutely 100% investment toward the American infrastructure, our economy will crumble.
All right. Senator, your reaction?
I think Republicans strongly support investment in infrastructure. It's one of the top priorities of the federal government. What we need to do is we need to look at lower priority spending items in the federal government and substitute spending on these lower priority items for the higher priority, which is national defense, which is infrastructure spending. So I don't think there's any argument from that standpoint. And there are proposals right now. Rand Paul's pushing this. A lot of us have been, be supportive of it. Let's repatriate all those foreign earnings over here, and with that windfall tax from that one-time repatriation, let's apply that toward infrastructure spending. But from my standpoint, you got a $3.5 trillion a year budget. In other words, $3,500 billion. The shortfall, for example, from the Highway Trust Fund is about $10 billion. Surely we could have found $10 billion out of a $3,500 billion budget of wasteful, duplicated spending that we could have repurposed for infrastructure. So the whole point. What I'm hoping Republicans do is we go through the thoughtful appropriation process, pass 12 appropriation bills. It's the way you can actually start prioritizing spending, department to department and even within department. We haven't been doing that, not since I've been here for 4 years under Democrat Senator Harry Reid. It's well past time we start going through the budgeting process, the appropriation process, and start prioritizing federal spending. If we do that, infrastructure spending will be high on everybody's list. There will be strong bipartisan support to support infrastructure spending.
All right. Randy's watching in Shreveport, Louisiana, a Republican. Hi, Randy.
Hello, Randy.
Hey, how are y'all this morning?
Morning.
We're good.
I just had a comment and also a question. You know, I sit here and I listen to C-SPAN and I watch all the networks, and you see Harry Reid stand up with all his people behind him, and the first thing he says is, "We're not for anything but the middle class." All right. So what the first thing they do? They vote down a project that will hire 30 to 40,000 people who obviously would be in the middle class. So they could care less about them. All they want is for people to stay home and get their goodies for the government so they can vote for them next time. And another thing, have you heard of that solar power plant out in I think Nevada, the huge one? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I'm generally familiar with it, but I'm not an expert on it.
Okay, well, that was a $1.2 billion solar power. Now, they haven't had enough sun to make it economically feasible for them to do some of the stuff they want to. And so now they're asking for a $500 million grant to help pay off their loan that they got. So you Democrats, you keep talking about the spills and everything, but just think about who's going to pay for that $500 million. Thank you. Y'all have a great day.
Okay, Randy.
First of all, I agree with you. Government's not a particularly, they're actually a horrible allocator of capital. That's what the private sector does. It's not perfect, but a lot better than government. So I really do want to have a strong private sector and incentivize that type of growth. But you know, from a standpoint of people's motivations, listen, I think as Americans, we all share the same goal. We all want a prosperous America. We're concerned about each other. We all want every American to have the opportunity to build a good life for themselves or family. Got wide areas of disagreement how to provide those opportunities, but you know, certainly what you're hearing from me, what you're hearing from certainly our leadership, is we really are taking this responsibility that the American people have bestowed on us with a great deal of humility and trying to reach out the other side, find those areas of agreement. Now, that's how I approach business. You know, when I did negotiating, I didn't start out the negotiation fighting right off the bat like President Obama's doing in immigration. I spent a lot of time on the front end figuring out everything we agreed on. It developed a relationship, a level of trust. So when you finally got to those areas of disagreement, it was a whole lot easier finding common ground. So that's my approach with the Homeland Security Committee. I think that's really the approach I'm hearing from the members of our caucus. And it's just up to the Democrats to, accept that outreach hand, work with us. Let's reduce regulatory burden. Let's make our tax system more competitive. Let's not artificially drive up the cost of power. That hurts Americans. And let's take advantage of what this land of opportunity really provides us, provides all of us.
I want to show our viewers and you what the Washington Post said recently, that you enter this 2016 election cycle as one of the most vulnerable Republicans on the map. He's undefined, the Washington Post said, in the eyes of many, polling shows, and he's running in a state that has gone Democratic in 7 straight presidential elections.
Well, I don't doubt that I'm, definitely a #1 target. Okay. Hopefully, what will end up happening in the state of Wisconsin is, I travel all the state all the time. I give my PowerPoint presentation. I lay out. Here's the facts. They're not real pretty to look at. You take a look at our fiscal situation. Hopefully, in the end, the voters and the citizens of Wisconsin will value somebody serving them in the United States Senate that's not afraid to tell them the truth, works really hard to get the truth out. Not afraid to be the messenger, even when the message is not particularly fun to look at, and promised and has carried through on that promise that I'll never vote my reelection in mind. I'm not doing this to get reelected. I'll let the election take care of itself. I'm going to just focus on the next couple of years, try and find those areas of common grounds for some common sense solutions, reduce the regulatory burden, get our economy moving. That's how you build a strong middle class. You get a strong economy where businesses are competing for labor. That's how you increase wages. So listen, I'm not going to change. I'm very focused. I've been very directed in terms of what my mission is, getting Americans and Wisconsinites the information they need so we collectively admit we have a problem, properly define it. Those are the first 2 steps before you can really start solving the problem.
What about fundraising, though? It's a necessity in order to get to win re-election. Are you in a position, what is your position right now as far as money in the bank?
I have not done a whole lot of fundraising the first 4 years in Wisconsin. There have always been higher priorities. And we had to survive a recall against our governor. Then we had the 2012 election. Then, Governor Walker had to get reelected again. So I've been fully supportive of assembly races and state senate races and Governor Walker trying to do that.
You mean contributing to them?
No, I mean working, doing events, trying to do everything I can to support those efforts. So now I'm in cycle next 2 years. You have to do that. It is not a fun part. I don't like it. But if you're going to get a message out, if I'm going to be able to defend myself against the onslaught of just negative, nasty ads that are going to paint me, you're not going to recognize the person that they're going to portray over the next couple of years. They actually tried it already. I think in 2011 they spent $500,000 on a targeted ad campaign on me already. They were doing a test market. See how by putting really nasty looking pictures of me, how that drives down my approval rating in a certain market. So listen, I know exactly what's coming at me. It's one of the reasons, by the way, Greta, why good people sometimes are pretty reluctant to get into the political fray. I mean, it's not a particularly pleasant process. I traveled around the country supporting Republican Senate candidates. I listened to the ads. The people I was supporting were not the people that were being portrayed in these ads. And I'm hoping more Americans, more Wisconsinites just tune all that negative advertising, all those negative campaign ads out, and just really look at the substance of who people are. And on that basis, I've always said I'll be the calmest guy in my election night. I win either way. Either get my old life back, which I love, I miss, or I'll appreciate the fact that Wisconsin, in the end, values somebody who's willing to tell them the truth. He's not doing this to get reelected, but is here to solve problems.
Did you use your own personal wealth the first time around? Will you use it this?
No, I used a lot of my personal wealth, and no, I won't be doing that the second time around.
You won't? Why not?
Because I don't think I really should have to. My record, what my goals are, should stand on their own merits. And if people want to see me reelected, I think people will support me. I don't think raising money is going to be a real issue. We've seen how much money was raised in this last election cycle, so I just don't think that's going to be necessary. I made my $9 million investment in this country. I gave it once. I don't think I should have to do it again.
Okay, all right. We're going to try to get in a couple more phone calls for you. Patty's first in New Orleans and Independent. Hi, Patty.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
Thank you, Greta. Thank you for C-SPAN. Senator Johnson, the concerns that I have regarding the Keystone XL pipeline, that the biggest thing is that we talk about approval ratings. 60% of Americans approve of this, but the problem I have with that is that it's not based on facts. I was listening earlier to Randy, who called from Shreveport, and these numbers get thrown out there: 30 to 40,000 jobs created, so on and so forth. And we all know that that's a little bit of research will show you that that's probably not true. Most of the jobs that we get from this are going to be temporary. And I was concerned earlier, someone asked you, I know they were throwing 3 questions at a time at you.
That was tough.
Yeah.
I'm getting old.
But, yeah, I understand that. But the question with the eminent domain, and it's kind of hard to see people discuss this time and again, kind of skirt around it. But I really believe it's being improperly used, and I'd like to hear you address that issue. You had said that was a concern.
So, Patty, I'm going to leave it there just because we're getting short on our time with the senator.
My concern about the expansion of eminent domain is where, in the Kelo decision, a local government could say, well, we want to tear down this house because if we put up an apartment complex, we'll get more taxes, as opposed to, I think, the purpose of eminent domain would be, all of us need this highway, and we want to have it go relatively straight. Or we want a pipeline, and we need, because we need oil, we need energy. So there's certain things they're certainly common goods that, the public does need to impose eminent domain so we can build some of these necessary infrastructure. Where I've got a problem is where it's for economic purposes and it has nothing to do with really the public need for infrastructure spending.
Senator Ron Johnson, thank you so much for talking to our viewers this morning. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Come back again.